Welcome to America's Heroes Group.
Welcome back to America's Heroes Group, this time with a familiar partner, the National Women's Veterans United, the NWVU. September is National Suicide Prevention and Hispanic Heritage Month. It's today, Saturday, September 29th, 2023. Our host is Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith, and our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Honor Productions. And we have our partner with us today. That's Rochelle Crump, of course, one and only U.S. Army veteran and founder and president of the National Women's Veterans United. And we're talking about the suicide prevention workshops coming up that they're sponsoring. How are you guys doing today?
Doing fine. Thank you so much. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. So tell us.
Yes, we're doing just great. Actually, we had one of those sessions on Tuesday, September the 5th. Mm-hmm. We had about 33 participants. Some of them were from the Department of Veterans Affairs. Others were from other organizations. And, of course, some of our membership, because we do like to keep some of the women, to have that training so that we can refer them to others and able to, talk about suicide, and also to remember we have to ask the question, we have to persuade, and we have to refer, for suicide prevention. So, it's a very daunting, process to talk about it, especially for me. I have known 5 people who actually have committed suicide, in my lifetime. And, of course, every time it rolls around, you kind of think about those things. And, it's a good thing that they're doing more and putting more efforts and, making it a really intentional, if you will, process to train organizations and individuals. So the training was excellent. We were trained by Sertoma Century. They have a grant that they use, and they've been training for the last 5 years or more. We have, had women veterans who have been trained by them to keep, that on our record. And, each time it gets more intense because, of course, those numbers sometimes don't change. When you look at the numbers, the national numbers, for example, I looked at, it's called NVSS, and basically it's the Vital Statistics Rapid Release. And this was from September of 22. They haven't put anything out for 23 yet. I haven't seen anything from them. But it shows that, females, they have actually declined. Okay. And that was interesting from the age of 65 to 74. And the decline was from 2020 to 2021. It went from 5.6 to 5.4, which is good. Anytime you can see, that 4% or whatever decline, that's really significant, But you also look at whether or not those numbers are changing for other rates, such as females in the age group of 35 to 44, 45 to 54, and then 75. And then, it also shows that if those numbers are going down, they're not rapidly going down. That's another thing that, actually gives you the understanding that there's still a lot of work to do.
And you're getting into also, too, the different eras. So people that are 75 and older, that's basically Vietnam era. If you're talking about 35 to 45, my age, you're talking about anywhere from Kosovo to Afghanistan to Iraq. Which are now aging away. And the stereotype often is that the people that are coming back from service now are the ones committing suicide. And the reality was most of the suicides, the 20 a day that we talk about sometimes, or the 22 a day, depending on what numbers you look at, those people are mostly from the Vietnam era. Most of those people are older people who are committing suicide in those numbers, not the younger folks who are just coming back. So as they start to age,
absolutely,
yeah. So our demographic starting to age. We're not quite yet in the senior demographic yet, but we're starting to age. So you're starting to see those suicide rates, just like the Vietnam era guys did, just like the World War II people did, start to creep up. Yeah. That's what it seems to be showing, just based on history.
Yeah.
And as you touched on, women, from what I understand, I don't know if this is still the case. Maybe you can let me know. Had the had the largest greater percentage of their cohort who committed suicide. A woman was more likely to commit suicide than a man from the military.
No.
Okay.
It's males.
Okay.
It is male. And, not that they don't, it's just that they have more resources in terms of, because a lot of times they are the caretakers. They are pretty much, and I'm talking about why women don't necessarily do it, because a lot of times they feel guilty, because they're doing so much. They got children that they're raising. You know what I'm saying? So it kind of keeps them in a position where these people are counting on them. And so, it's not that they're not having a hard time dealing with it, and you would think that that's the way to go because they have so many restrictions and things that they have to do, that would be the thing that sends them over the top, but it's actually not. It's those things a lot of times from financial, from being ill, a lot of times from, we know that military sexual trauma has really taken a toll on women, and there were some suicides from that. In fact, I don't believe they were all suicide, though. I really don't. I think they were friendly fire, if you will. And because they came out saying that they were unknown. When you look at those records from the military, from the Department of Defense, you see unknown a lot of times. But then they tell the parents pretty much that it was, like suicide. And everybody's trying to figure out, but that's not what they saw in their own children, and I just speak one, for example, which was Lavidia, I think I'm saying her name right, but Johnson, and her father was a medical doctor, and they told them that they had actually coded her as suicide, and he wanted to see the body. I want to see my daughter. And he was able to do that, and then everything changed from that point.
Wow.
And they went into some deep, legal things, which they're still in, from my understanding. But you look at those things, they're far and few, but it's not far and few that suicide is one of the bigger problems for males. And the ones, if you can remember and may have seen, some of them have committed suicide at the VA, in the parking lot, in the facility, and that's sad. I know that, and I'm not going to bash the VA. That's never my intent. But also I do have remembrance of what happened to people that I know, went to get service and did not, and was not able to get that service. That's been a while now. But, it never leaves your mind of, if you get bad fruit at a fruit shop, you wouldn't go back again. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those type of things. So, I have a hard time with that. But, you keep looking at the progress that they make, the efforts that they put out in order to do those things. There's a lot more legislation being done to increase those, demands of them to do better, if you will. So, that's good. And it helps us to be able to, have this training and make sure that everyone is trained. And it's just not the training that's going to save people. It's the actions that we have from the training. How do we continue to, help those who need us the most? And we see that a lot of times, in different groups. And that's one of the reasons why, we created the National Women Veterans United, because we knew the struggles of things like that. And even though we're not experts at it, we want to have a place that's safe for them to come, where they can talk about it, where they feel like they're being heard, and where, it's not about sharing a lot of times, even though peer support is like sharing a lot of things too, but it's more so of listening as well, and providing some resources for them. Let them know that you'll go with them. That's always good. Let them know that it's nothing to be ashamed of, that, because you want to remove that from them also, because you don't want them to shut down on you, and you want that honesty from them. But you have to ask them, just bluntly, are you thinking about killing yourself, or are you all right? We have to do that. And then we have to persuade them, to get the help,
How hard is it to have those conversations when you started? Because we just talked about this in one of our segments earlier, where a lot of people think that it's there was a myth or a stereotype that you shouldn't, people don't want to say the word suicide or ask that direct question because they're afraid that maybe the person might say yes, or the person might maybe even think about doing it because you suggested it some kind of way. How does those conversations go when you've done these things in the past for you, when you've had these conversations?
Well, I can just tell you from my own experience of having to talk someone down from that, and I don't consider myself having been trained during that time, and her thing was, if you send the police here, I will do that. I will kill myself, and I had to keep talking her down by saying, well, if I don't send the police, can I come? Will you let me come over? And she allowed me to come over. Now, this was dark. She lived way out in the south suburbs, and it was pretty dark going out there, I want to say. But she allowed me to come in her home. And what we did, we started talking about that, but we also talked about other things. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I started talking about how pretty her hair was. I said, oh, it looked like you're going out tonight. I started, diffusing some of those things. Now, whether or not that was the right thing to do or not, it worked at the end. Mm-hmm. She allowed me to talk with her daughter who was there.
Wow.
She had tried to cut herself. She started with the cutting and stuff. And I asked, can I talk to your daughter? Because at the time I was actually working for DCFS, and I had to put that hat on and remember that there was a child in the house. I didn't know what method she was going to use until the daughter told me that she was cutting.
How old was her daughter?
So it's her daughter was a teenager. She was like 13.
Wow.
So, I had great concerns about that. And my first thought was, I know I need to call that police. But, I was torn between call the police and not calling the police because you just don't know.
Mm-hmm. But in this real situation, we talk about this here in Chicago. You're familiar with this because one of the things that people are, what the new mayor is concerned with and has been trying to initiate is not using the police for things like crises such as these, where the police are not necessarily trained. Like, how is a police officer trained to handle someone who's trying to commit suicide? When
even
their main tool for everything is handcuffs and a gun.
Well, it's safety first for them, and you have to understand that.
Right.
I had mixed emotions about it too, but I understand that they want to go home too. Mm-hmm. And when you think of it like that, some are more compassionate than others and some are more aggressive than others, but aggression comes from a lot of different people in a lot of different ways and a lot of different reasons why they are aggressive, So you look at that, but, you still have to talk to them about it, you can't sugarcoat it, because if you sugarcoat it, how are you ever going to find out whether or not they really are or that they're not? So you have to ask the question. No, it does not give them ideas, because if they're going to commit suicide, they already pretty much talked about it at one point or the other. It's not something that just, I'm going to kill myself today. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And for her, who I was, actually talking to, that wasn't her first time, things like that. But, all in the same breath, you have to stay with them, and that's the goal. The goal is to try to talk them, down to getting that referral and let me go with you. You know what I'm saying? And nothing to be ashamed of. Don't be ashamed that you're feeling this way. It's okay not to feel good today,
Wow.
But, I was glad that I was able to do it, because it worked, and she did get the help that she needed, and she's still here. Let's just say that. She's
what you did that night with your friend, I really want to get into the topic of how you handled the daughter, because 13 years old, I'm really curious about what she was going through, but we don't have time for to go into that direction. But my question is now, because of your workshop, is what did you learn from the workshop that you would have done differently from what you did back then, which was successful and it actually worked? What tools and how did you change your methods from what you learned in the workshop?
Well, I actually have had that training twice before. This is my second time. And what I learned each time were, there was not much change of having that conversation and, basically asking the question, trying to persuade them, to talk to somebody for help, because that's the whole goal. The goal is to make them want to get the help, because if they don't get the help, unless you're going to stay there all day, every day with them, you'll never know when or where. So it's trying to get them the help that they need right away, you know, and that's why it's so important for the VA pretty much to not tell somebody that comes in there that says, I need to see somebody, oh, it's going to be 3 hours before we can get to you. Now go figure that one. You understand what I'm saying? So we have to be prepared for the whatever. Let's just say that, for whatever. We should never have that type of attitude. And the person may have been overwhelmed. There was a lot of people in there. You know, the wife, this is a whole nother situation. And I had to get up, and I went to the VA because it scared me to death when she said that, because I was afraid I was going to lose that person. You know? I sent somebody there because he's not feeling good. He finally decides that he's going. He made up his mind he will go. His wife traveled from Joliet all the way to Jesse Brown and get there, and then they tell them it's going to be 3 hours before somebody see you. You know, so we have to do better in that, and we don't give up on, you know, trying to help people and talk to them, and we have to ask that question: are you thinking about hurting or harming yourself? And her daughter, back to the daughter, her daughter was not well. Let me just say that. And I say she was not well from the environment, because, you know, she's run away before. She's, you know, it's that. So even getting that information told me that there were other things that had been going on over time. But that was actually talked about also, you know, because maybe the daughter has some mental health issues. We don't know, you know, because no one has tested her. No one with, you know, credentials have actually sat down and had that conversation with her. You know, the mother flips out at sometimes. Maybe that's too much for that daughter, you know. But I asked her, I said, is there anybody that she could go and stay with for a while, you know? And she wouldn't do it. She didn't want to go, you know. But she was isolating herself, because when she, you know, started talking about, when I got there and we started talking about it, I talked to her alone, and I also talked to her with her mother, and it didn't change. She still was in a state of, you know, just like shut down. But she did share, you know, that, you know, she was just tired, pretty much was her answer, tired, which means that she was tired of the whole situation itself. So, and there was other things that, you know, were there in the home, and I recognized that and stuff, and I had to talk to her about, you know, because they were things that needed to be reported, pretty much, you know.
Wow.
And I told her when I first came in that I was a mandated reporter, because I had to tell her that too. But, you know, she allowed me in, and I was grateful to be able to have that conversation with her, and she's still here today. So because I would have never known.
Yeah, that's I mean, that's a sad story, but it's a triumphant story because you actually were able to do something. It sounds like to me that the VA, then just looking at military strategy from this standpoint, if you're trying to solve or tackle a problem, an issue, you may not have the resources in your building, but you have organizations like National Women's Veterans United. Like, you came down to the VA as a nonprofit organization. You came down to the VA. It didn't cost anybody any money. You went down there and actually successfully saved somebody, saved a few people from committing suicide. So at the VA, maybe we need to start to address the issue of how does a VA utilize, if they don't have the resources in-house, they don't have the staff necessarily in-house, and every environment is different, every region is different, how do we start using our veteran service organizations to meet that gap, meet that need, picking up the phone, having a hotline or a list of veteran service organizations you can call from the VA when someone comes in that you can hand them off to. They can come down to the VA, you know, not here's a card and go call these people, have a nice day, but
exactly.
Right. Sit down,
and that
give you some attention. Come here. We're gonna have somebody come and talk to you. We're out of time now, Rochelle. We can talk for hours. We got to get.
Yeah, I know. But, and I'm glad you said that, though, because we still have work to do with the VA, and this is not getting off the subject at all. It's because they have, over the weekend, they don't have full staff, as you know.
Wow.
So, when you're talking about homeless people coming there, and I had someone there who basically, it's the same thing with her. They don't know the background of some of them, and what happens a lot of times.
We just run out, our clock's going out. This is America's Heroes Group.
Okay.
We'll be right back. Come back next week, Rochelle. Right, talk to you soon.